My name is Katie Grassmeyer. I have been teaching now for 5 years. This is my second year at Living Stones teaching first grade. I get so much joy out of teaching that I can't imagine doing anything else and being as joyful as I am teaching. Danny's love for people shines through at all times. He cares so deeply for others, and he is quick to laugh, very quick to make others want to laugh also. And we all just end up more joyful because of his laughter and his spirit. He loves to make cards for people. That was probably one of Danny's biggest traits, is he sees the people that don't often get seen as much. And Danny writes a different card to Miss Winters, to Miss Pies, to the teachers that probably don't get seen as much, and to the people around. He sees them and he wants them to know that he loves them and he cares about them and that he is so grateful for the work that they do. For not being able to do field trips this year, the students asked if we could go to a park, a public park that is very close to school. And I decided that we would go on a nature walk. We took our compasses. We had to go find which was north, which way was south, and we had made our way to Fuller Park. At some point along the way, Danny was in the front of the line and talking to me, and he goes, "Oh, we're going to the park with the scary people." And I knew what he was talking about. There are people that live at Fuller Park. And I just said, "Danny, there are people that live at Fuller Park, and there are people that are there, but they are also children of God, just like the people in your class, just like you, just like me, just like your family. And when we go there, we are entering a place that they live."
It's very apparent that when you're at LSA, it's not just about you and your own academic education, but it's about growing you as a Christ follower. And that means seeing and caring about other people, to call everyone in his class a friend. And that just was critical in the development that he had of caring about and noticing other people.
This past November, we were at a garage sale, and there was a stack of brown paper bags, and Danny brought them up to me and said, "Can I get these?" I said, "Okay, sure." Brought them home, and he went right to his desk, and he started drawing pictures on them. And then he came up to me and he asked if I had some food. And I said, "You don't need food. It's not dinner time yet." And he's like, "No, I want to fill these bags with food for the people who need them." He wanted to make sure it was like healthy and nourishing food. He's like, "Not snacks. We need real food." So we did granola bars and apples and water. And he maybe did 5 or 6 bags that first night. So the next day after school, we drove around to find people to give them to. And I thought Danny would get a bag and hand it through the window. And before I knew what he was doing, he opened the door and jumped out, and he ran up to this person and, he said, "I made this for you." And the look on their face, Danny gave the man the bag and he leaned down and gave Danny a big hug. It was just amazing to see. They're so used to being ignored, and here's this little boy who sees them and made something for them.
Well, in that story, you hear how Danny felt prompted to step out in love. As we take a break in the story, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever felt prompted to step out in love, but for whatever reason didn't follow through? And here's the question: what stopped you? What kept you from responding in that moment? If you would, what I'd like you to do is just to enter that in the chat feature tonight. What held you back? What kept you from writing that note that you felt prompted to write, to send that text? What kept you from bringing over a meal to someone who might have really needed that as a source of encouragement? What stopped you from speaking up when you heard someone say something that was offensive to someone else and tore somebody else down? What kept you from going to the march when you felt called to be a part of something bigger than yourself and to stand with somebody who was hurting? What I'd like to do is just take a few minutes for you to reflect on that question, to think about it for yourself, and then share that with the rest of us. I see some of those are starting to come in there as you think about what it is that holds us back, what holds you back in those moments when we feel prompted, in the ways that Danny was prompted to take a chance, to pick up some brown paper bags, to care about somebody who God had placed on his heart. I see some of these answers coming in now. Some of us have our own plans. Sometimes we're tired. Boy, this past year, we've been through so much. Fatigue is certainly a factor. Happiness, thank you. Fear. Sometimes we don't know how other people are going to respond. What will they think of us? What will they say about us if we speak up in those moments? And sometimes somebody just mentioned selfishness, right? We've got our own agenda. We've got our own plans. There's things that we want to accomplish. And so to go out of our way to do something else means that we might have to give up something of ourselves in order to respond in those moments. Somebody just put the fear of rejection, right? Sometimes what happens is when we step out and we offer ourselves, that we find out that what we thought would be helpful isn't received well. It's not accepted. So many excellent examples, so many contributions here. Forgetfulness. Sometimes we just forget. Sometimes it's pride. Wow, these are really beautiful. Trish asks, will it make a difference? We wonder, well, our little contribution, what difference is it going to make? Some of the problems in our world, sometimes the things that we're facing are so big that our little contribution, is it really going to make any difference? Those are really wonderful. And thank you for making those contributions. And I hope it's something that each of us will continue to think about as the Holy Spirit prompts us about what holds us back, what keeps us from loving boldly the way that God has called us to. Well, what we learned tonight is that when Danny felt prompted, he did indeed step out boldly. Danny's stories grows and radiates out to his friends in his classroom. Through him, others were encouraged to step into that living hope. Let's get back to Danny's story and see what happens next.
Danny had a lot more paper bags to fill, so I just put it out there. You know, if anyone has extra food, my son's putting these bags together, and we got a lot of food donated. So I thought Danny could keep working on them, but if we had more people working on them, he could get more done. I thought maybe his friends at school would want to help him with that, and so I talked to Miss Grassmeyer, and I was kind of expecting that's not part of our plan, that's not our curriculum, or that's going to take time away from something else, or even saying homelessness that's a hard topic to talk about. Do we want to bring that into the first grade classroom and have them know about that and talk about that? I remember the video that I watched about Ruby coming to school, and her dad said they didn't say no. And when Mrs. Grassmeyer said, I'm going to ask about that, like that was my thought, was they didn't say no.
We decided that Danny would come in and teach us how he was drawing on the bags, teach us how he was filling the bags, and that we would do that as a class. And they wanted to learn what Danny had to say. They wanted to hear. They wanted to be a part of what Danny was starting in our classroom and what he had already started at home. And so the day that Danny did the project in class, he stood up at the board, and I often do directed drawings where I stand at the board and I teach them, like, okay, draw a circle. They draw a circle. Give me a thumbs up when you're done. And it was just a very good reminder that they're always listening to everything I say, because Danny stood up there. He drew the same rectangle that I always drew. He said, okay, draw a circle, thumbs up, everybody. Are you finished with your circle? And so he did that whole process of drawing on the bag for us. And the kids would, Mr. Miedema, what was the last step? Did I have to draw the hat with a curved line? And raising their hand, calling him Mr. Miedema, he was taking the time to really help each student and be a wonderful teacher to them in the drawing. Then each of the kids added their own little detail. Some of them wrote, Jesus loves you. They signed their name. We hope you have a great day.
I guess Katie took Danny's seat in the back of the classroom, and Danny, she sent me pictures of Danny standing up front of the class, leading his class.
I'm going to be honest, I was more focused on the rest of the class than drawing it, so I was just kind of not doing a very good job. And Danny came by my desk, or his desk afterwards, and was like, Mrs. Grassmeyer, you're not a very good listener. That doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like. And I was like, oh, sorry, Danny, I wasn't really paying attention. He later went on to say, that's okay, I don't always pay attention either. We had all the food that Danny brought on our desk, and he just had them lining up, and he would put one in the bag, then he'd say, okay, you need one of these, one of these, one of these, and the kids would fill their bags. We left them all on the desk for the rest of the day, and at the end of the school day, Mr. Winkle, Zara, and I, we drove just the less than quarter mile around the corner to Fuller Park. And there was about probably 10 people there that were saying how they were going to spend the night there and more of their friends would be coming later. And we asked them if we could talk to them for a minute, and I told them about how we were first grade just from up the hill and how my students had drawn on these bags and filled them with food for them. And as they opened up the bags and saw the drawings, the tears started filling their eyes, and you could tell that that just meant the world to them. It wasn't about the food, it was about the time and the intentionality of the drawings on the bag and feeling like somebody took time out of their day to draw me a picture. That was the moment that I was like, oh, this is like Jesus is working through Danny right now to bless me and to bless Living Stones, to bless the Fuller Park community.
Danny's heart is very creative and he loves to draw, and I think he was learning how to use that gift for other people. And I think they're really good at teaching kids to find their gifts, but then also how do you use those gifts for the rest of the world?
I am so grateful for a school like Living Stones where I can hear an idea about a brown paper bag and know the depth of which that will translate into my students' learning and see the long-lasting effects of that learning that's more than just a test score or data. It's driven by how to be a Christ follower, how to bring God's kingdom to earth, and to find God in somebody that has a different story than them, that didn't necessarily grow up even knowing God's love, that they can see God's love in that person and encourage them in that. That is something that they will take with them so much farther than first grade.